So today we are discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, 8th chapter, 36th verse. So this 8th chapter is a very important chapter because this is discussing prayers by Queen Kunti. So as you might have heard in previous verses from this chapter about the mood of Kunti Maharani when she prays to Lord Krishna. And Krishna is visiting Hastinapur and he is going to leave soon. So that is when this has been spoken. And before coming to this verse, actually, why this has come, because Kunti Maharani is glorifying Krishna's birth from 29th, verse number 29 to 31st. She talks about mysterious nature of Lord Krishna's birth and activities, and from 32 to 34 she talks about various opinions about the birth of unborn Lord. Normally Lord is not born but he is still born, so that is sometimes what you say, a contradictory statement. But this is the Leela of the Lord, so pastimes of the Lord, that's why it happens that way. So when there were various opinions which were discussed in previous verses, it was discussed that Lord takes birth to glorify the pious kings like Yudhishthira. Punya shlokasya kirtayate. And second thing would be to please dear devotee, to please his dear devotees like King Yadu. Yadoho priya shyananvaya. As an answer, and then in the verse number 33, it tells about other opinion. As an answer to the prayers of Vasudeva and Devaki, Krishna appeared. Then also in that same verse, in 33rd verse, it tells about for the welfare of the world, asya kshemaya, to kill the asuras, vadhaya cha suraddusham. So that is something which we know from Bhagavad Gita verse. यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम धर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्य परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृताम. So that particular aspect is also discussed. In 34th verse it says, he came in response to Brahma's prayers to relieve the overburdened earth. But the real reason why he came is there in the verse number 35, which tells that to rejuvenate the process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, and all different activities, so that the conditioned souls might be freed from the pangs of suffering caused by actions, karma, caused by material desires, kama, and caused by ignorance, avidya. These three things, because of these three things, there are conditioning. And how this verse is now, what we are discussing is related to that, is however there is a suffering because of all these avidya, karma, and kama, but these are all incidental. The actual result of hearing about Lord Krishna would be to know when we think about his lotus feet and how it actually the hearing comes to us is described in this verse, which we are going to recite. So I will recite like one or two times and then volunteers can recite. I will first recite and please repeat after me. शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति गृह्णन्ति अभीक्षणः
शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति गृह्णन्ति
कृष्णः
विलक्षणः
स्मरन्ति नन्दन्ति तवेहितं जनाः
स्मरन्ति नन्दन्ति
तवेदं
तवेदं
त एव पश्यन्त्यचिरेण तावकम्
त एव पश्यन्ति अचिरेण तावकम्
भवप्रवाहो परमं पदाम्बुजम्
भवप्रवाहो परमं पदाम्बुजम्
One more time. शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति गृह्णन्त्यभिक्षणसः
शृण्वन्ति
शृण्वन्ति
गायन्ति
गायन्ति
गृह्णन्ति
गृह्णन्ति अभीक्षणः
अभिक्षणः
स्मरन्ति नन्दन्ति तवेहितं जनाः
स्मरन्ति नन्दन्ति तवेहितं जनाः
त एव पश्यन्त्यचिरेण तावकम्
त एव पश्यन्ति अचिरेण तावकम्
भवप्रवाहो परमं पदाम्बुजम्
भवप्रवाहो परमं पदाम्बुजम्
Now anybody can volunteer and recite.
I want to recite, Prabhu.
Yeah, Mataji.
शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति गृह्णन्ति अभीक्षणसः
शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति गृह्णन्ति अभीक्षणशः
स्मरन्ति नन्दन्ति तवेहितं जनः
स्मरन्ति नन्दन्ति
नन्दन्ति
तवेहितं
तवेहितं
जनः
जनाः
त एव पश्यन्ति अचिरेण तावकम्
त एव
तदेव
पश्यन्ति
पश्यन्ति
अचिरेण
अचिरेण
तावकम्
तावकम्
भवप्रवाहो परमं पदाम्बुजम्
भवप्रवाहो
भवप्रवाहो
परमं
परमं
पदाम्बुजम्.
पदाम्बुजम्
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji. Any other?
I can try, Prabhu.
Yeah, Mataji.
शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति गृह्णन्ति अभिक्षंसाः
शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति गृह्णन्ति अभीक्षणशः
स्मरन्ति नन्दन्ति तवेहितं जनाः
स्मरन्ति नन्दन्ति तवेहितं जनाः
त एव पश्यन्ति अचिरेण तावकम्
त एव पश्यन्ति अचिरेण तावकम्
भवप्रवाहो परमं पदाम्बुजम्
भवप्रवाहो परमं पदाम्बुजम्.
हरे कृष्ण.
Hare Krishna. Any one more? Anybody want to try?
Prabhu, I can try.
Okay, Mataji.
शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति गृह्णीयतः भीषणः
शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति गृह्णन्ति अभीक्षणशः
स्मरन्ति नन्दन्ति तवेहितं जनाः
स्मरन्ति
नन्दन्ति
जनाः
तवेहितं जनाः
त एव पश्यन्तः चिरेण तावकः
त एव
एव पश्यन्ति
अचिरेण
अचिरेण तावकम्
भवाप्रभाहो प्रमामं पदाम्बुजाम्
भवप्रवाहो
भवप्रवाहो परमं
पदाम्बुजम्.
पदाम्बुजम्
हरे कृष्ण.
Thank you, Mataji. So here in the synonyms, I can actually read about that. And Shrinvanti is hearing, Gayanti is chanting, Grinanti is to take, as it says here in this, Abhikshanasa continuously, Smaranti is remember, as you know, Nandanti means take pleasure, Anandati, so in that say Nandati. Tava, your, Ihitam is activities, so Ihitam, Tavehitam, here we see. Janaha, people in general. They, Eva, certainly. Pashyanti, can see. Achirena means without taking more time. Achirena is without taking more time. Very soon. Tavakam, your. Bhava Pravaha, the current of rebirth. Now here Bhava Pravaha is like, Pravaha is the, you would see, the force of water is called Pravaha. Bhava means the material world. So the sansar sagar, as you say. So that Pravaha, the current of rebirth, is explained here in that way. And Uparamam is cessation. So that Bhava Pravaha can be Uparama, can be can be stopped by how? By taking shelter of Padambujam, that is lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we can read the translation.
I can read, Prabhu.
Yeah.
O Krishna, Those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities or take pleasure in others doing so certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. So here it says, those who continuously hear, chant. Now here Kunti Maharani is saying about this. O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities, or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death, which can that bhava pravaha can be stopped. So that is how she is mentioning about that is the real reason why Krishna comes, and he comes for his devotees and to take them out of this false understanding or suffering of caused by the actions, caused by the material desires, caused by ignorance. And how this can be taken care of is one who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities. All these things are taken care of, means these things gradually go on decreasing, and there is a purification which happens in the heart and the mind of the devotee, and he started taking pleasure in doing all this, and it starts with the hearing process. So everything starts with hearing. So that's what it is mentioned here. So we'll read the purport now. Any volunteers for the purport?
I want to
Hare
read.
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna cannot be seen by our present conditional vision. In order to see him, one has to change his present vision by developing a different condition of light, full of spontaneous love of Godhead. When Sri Krishna was personally present on the face of the globe, not everyone could see him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Materialists like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, Jarasandha, and Sisupala were highly qualified personalities by acquisition of material assets, but they were unable to appreciate the presence of the Lord. Therefore, even though the Lord may be present before our eyes, it is not possible to see him unless we have the necessary vision. This necessary qualification is developed by the process of devotional service only. Beginning with hearing about the Lord from the right sources, the Bhagavad Gita is one of the popular literatures which are generally heard, chanted, repeated, etc. by the people in general, but in spite of such hearing, etc., sometimes it is experienced that the performer of such devotional service does not see the Lord face to face. The reason is that the first item, Sravana, is very important. If hearing is from the right source, it acts very quickly. Generally, people hear from unauthorized persons. Such unauthorized persons may be very learned by academic qualifications, but because they do not follow the principles of devotional service, hearing from them becomes a sheer waste of time. Sometimes the texts are interpreted fashionably to suit their own purposes. Therefore, first one should select a competent and bona fide speaker and then hear from him. When the hearing process is perfect and complete, the other processes become automatically perfect in their own way.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
So it ends like, how does it start? It starts by the vision and ends with the hearing part. So the thing is that when we see by through our ears, in the sense that the first understanding comes from hearing, and by the hearing we understand the Lord. So now here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada starts like, Supreme Lord Sri Krishna cannot be seen by a present conditional vision, because he gives an example that materialists like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, Jarasandha and Shishupal, all these were there when Krishna was personally present there, or Sri Ram was personally present there, but they could not see him, they could not understand him, because they were not favorably disposed. That's why they could not see it. But devotees who have life full of spontaneous love of Godhead, or who are favorable, they could see the Lord as he is. So, and then Prabhupada talks about that we need that necessary vision to understand the Lord, and that necessary vision comes that through a qualification which is developed by the process of devotional service only. And as I was saying, that we see by hearing. So that's the thing, and the hearing process is mentioned in many of the literatures, and even the shrutis were passed down through hearing. So one would recite, another person would hear it, and that's how it was passed. So that's how it's so important. And even if you see our musical in section also, like traditional music, it is like seen by hearing. Like by hearing we know the tunes, and they start to play the strings and everything. There is no written like here in in the Western way of music is you have notes, so you see the notes and play it. But in the traditional Vedic version, we hear the notes and then it is played. So that's how it is transferred, and we see by through our ears. So then Prabhupada talks about that when we hear, we should hear from proper sources, and that is required, because if we hear from unauthorized people, they may be academically very good, but they don't follow the principle of devotional service. So once one who cannot follow it, he cannot give it. That's very easy to understand. One who had that knowledge can give. Like when we go for studies, one who had if you're going to dentist, he would actually help you with your dental problems. But if you go to a plumber, he cannot help you. He may do something which will not be good for a longer run. The same way, we should go to the proper or right authoritative person who follows the principles of devotional service. And that's why Prabhupada says, hearing from people who are not qualified become a sheer waste of time. Sometimes the texts are interpreted fashionably, because they interpret it in a fashion that, okay, how I can relate to this modern world. They would use modern terminology and try to explain it that way, without getting into the details of where actually the essence lies, because they are not trained about that. So how they could do that? So they would. That's why it says sometimes the texts are interpreted fashionably to suit their own purposes. Therefore, first one should select a competent and bona fide speaker. So that is the first qualification, and then hear from him. And when our hearing process is perfect, then the other process is automatically perfect. That's what Prabhupada says. So we'll read the next paragraph here, and then we'll discuss.
There are different transcendental activities of the Lord, and each and every one of them is competent to bestow the desired result, provided the hearing process is perfect. In the Bhagavatam, the activities of the Lord begin from his dealings with the Pandavas. There are many other pastimes of the Lord in connection with his dealings with the Asuras and others. And in the 10th canto, the sublime dealings with his conjugal associate, the gopis, as well as with his married wives at Dwaraka are mentioned. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no difference in the transcendental nature of each and every dealing of the Lord. But sometimes people in an unauthorized hearing process take more interest in hearing about his dealings with the gopis. Such an inclination indicates the lusty feelings of the hearer, so a bona fide speaker of the dealings of the Lord never indulges in such hearings. One must hear about the Lord from the very beginning, as in the Srimad Bhagavatam or any other scriptures, and that will help the hearer attain perfection by progressive development. One should not therefore consider that his dealings with Pandavas are less important than his dealings with the gopis. We must always remember that the Lord is always transcendental to all mundane attachment. In all the above mentioned dealings of the Lord, he is the hero in all circumstances, and hearing about him or about his devotees are combatants in conducive to spiritual life. It is said that the Vedas and Puranas, etc., are all made to revive our lost relation with him. Hearing of all these scriptures is essential. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji. Again, Prabhupada stresses on the hearing process. He says we can get our desired result provided the hearing process is perfect. And he also ends here. Hearing of all these scriptures is essential, like the Vedas and Puranas, to revive our lost relationship. And then Prabhupada talks about that how like people who are professional reciters of Srimad Bhagavatam select a particular portion of from 10th canto and try to do that, and that tells about their mentality, about how they see the things. So that says such an inclination indicates the lusty feelings of the hearer, because they want to hear about the dealings, Lord Krishna's dealing with the gopis, not about other devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of interaction with Lord and his devotees. That's why Srila Prabhupada also says when a sadhaka starts reading, he should start from the first chapter and go towards the 10th chapter, because by 9th chapter he would have all the he had developed all the piety to understand the 10th chapter. And second thing is to hear from a proper source. Then only that piety is attained. Otherwise, very difficult to get it. So one must hear about Lord from very beginning, as in Srimad Bhagavatam or any other scriptures. That will help. And that's why one should not therefore consider that his dealings with the Pandavas are less important than his dealings with the gopis. Because Lord is transcendental, his dealings are transcendental. So you read from anywhere, any dealing is considered important. Like it is being told that you when there is a sugar cube, you bite from any place, it will be sweeter. So Bhagavatam, when we start from the beginning and we read about it, it is always sweeter, because that is in the third verse of Srimad Bhagavatam also tells that it is having rasa actually. So here in all above mentioned dealing with the Lord, he is the hero. Why? Because he is hero in all circumstances, and hearing about him or about his devotees. And see, another thing Prabhupada added, combatants also. Not about him, his devotees or combatants like the asuras, because they are being liberated. Even if we hear that also, that is purifying and is conducive to our spiritual life. So that is what is discussed here. So in a nutshell, this verse actually is spoken by Kunti Maharani, and she says, "O Krishna, those who continuously hear about you, chant and repeat your transcendental activities, certainly see your lotus feet." So they would definitely, the ultimate goal is to see Lord face to face. And that only happens by purifying through all these processes. And when they see the lotus feet of the Lord, which alone can stop. So that means seeing Lord means everything else is stopped. Like the birth and death is stopped. We are also getting the transcendental nature of through interaction with the Lord, and then we can go back to the spiritual world. So any question or discussion points here is now welcomed. Or any realizations, whatever comes.
Thank you, Prabhu. That was a nice one. My take home points seeing the Lord means everything stops. And second thing was if you don't follow, then you cannot teach. And from the shloka, Nandanti tavehitam janaha. So taking pleasure. I may be hearing, I may be doing many, hearing, talking about Lord, but actually taking pleasure in that. Taking pleasure in hearing from others, taking pleasure in reciting it myself. So those were my points. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, those are very wonderful points. Like taking pleasure is something which is sometimes very difficult to get. Means even we can hear, chant, or repeat, but taking pleasure when somebody else does it is something we have to inculcate and develop. So that's a wonderful point. Thank you.
Prabhu, you have discussed one about conjunctive or something. Can you please repeat that?
Which one?
Conjunctive.
Conducive?
Yeah, the last para.
Last para about which one?
Something you have said about conducive.
Conducive to mood is conducive, only then the Lord can be seen. Something like that, perhaps.
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Prabhu. Please go ahead.
So because I talked about conducive in the first line also, where our hearing how it should be, but in this second verse is how we can be how our because to be conducive to get the mercy of the Lord, we have to hear from a proper source. That's what I was mentioning. Like if we hear from improper source, like as I was giving an example of a dentist and a plumber, which is a very crude example, but I'm saying that if we hear from a proper person, then we would get the proper remedy what is needed for us, because because we
Got
have the disease of this, as I was saying, there is a disease of ignorance, there is a suffering of karma, there is suffering of material desires. So that's what I was saying conducive about that. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, this point is very nice, Prabhu. That hearing and continuous hearing process purifies.
Yeah, so the hearing is the very important process that is being described throughout the scriptures. Even when in Bhagavad Gita, those 6 chapter which talks about Bhakti Yoga, the 7th chapter starts with the the verse where Krishna says Tat Shunu. He ends with Tat Shunu. So just hear attentively is what even with the chanting also, when we chant, we try to hear it attentively. So hearing is a very important process, as I was mentioning in Vedic thing, and that is even in music, in all different aspects. Hearing is very important. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you for this wonderful question.
Yeah. So you want to say that? Yes. Manohar Gopal Prabhu.
Yes,
आपने
Mataji.
I'll let you conclude the class. आपने please जय ध्वनि आप ही बोलना.
Oh, okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, right?
Yes, Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Srimad
jai,
Bhagavatam
Srila
ki
Prabhupada ki
Prabhupada
jai,
ki jai. Srila Gurudev.
Tamil
I thought maybe
Bhakta
it's going
ki
on. The
jai.
questions are going on. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai.
Vaishnavata ki jai. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Haritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavibhyo namo.
Hari Hari.